Good morning and welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast. I am one of the hosts, the Harry Wookie Steve, and I'm here with some more appealing and educated people in the Star Wars universe. And we're going to be talking about today, in our second of the series of reviewing or look back at the Star Wars films, we're looking at Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And I know everyone in the Star Wars universe is excited for all conversations on the prequels. And first, let's look at everyone here today. We have again Kylo Jen.
Yeah.
Show us your shirt. Show us the one that's going to make some people angry and some people happy. There's
right
Jar
here.
Jar.
Where is he? There he is.
There he is.
Okay, right. No, that guy. You know the one I'm talking about.
And we also have, got him a good moment, Trooper Tide.
I just want to say no one's ever accused me of being educated.
Dude, I watched a therapy video and it says to help people like you by saying that. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
You are so smart. Speaking of smart, we also have Revenge of the Jason.
I would like to welcome everybody to this super spectacular Super Bowl Sunday edition of our discussion of Attack of the Clones, because what goes together better than football and Star Wars?
Well said, fellow nerd. And I'm sure because of us doing a special time on Sunday this week, that everyone, I'm pretty sure we took a big portion of the Super Bowl audience over to us.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sports.
So, sports. I was waiting for someone to say it. I didn't want to be the person to say that. But before we start, I just wanted to make sure that everyone subscribes to the channel. It really helps us out. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because that's what all the cool kids do. And, you know, we are cool kids. And every time I say we're cool kids, my daughters roll their eyes. So that means yes in teenage language, right?
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
My daughter did the same thing.
Teenagers. Anyways, welcome, guys. So I've been looking forward to this one because I think we pretty much have, I don't know, we kind of made mention, in my opinion, of the three. This might have been the weaker of the three, in my opinion, but so let's just get into it.
Well, I'm going to say that's false, because after watching it last night, to me, this is a far superior movie compared to Episode 1. To me, Episode 1 is the dog of the whole entire franchise, quite frankly. Just because there was, again, because there's so much unnecessary stuff. Where this one, again, for me, now that 2021 Todd looks at movies differently. To me, there wasn't so much excess, useless information or useless video, just little jokes in the film. So, and I just thought it was much, much cleaner and just not a lot of waste of time throughout the whole entire movie. That's what I thought.
I would agree with you on that one. And I think that if Episode 1 was just the lightsaber duel at the end and just the pod racing scene, I would say that it was a stronger movie. But because there's all that other stuff in there, that right. was what kind of elevates Episode 2. But then the other thing, to your point, Steve, though, I think is that a middle movie in a trilogy is difficult, right? We all know that you have to have unresolved tension. You have to have, like, a middle movie is always really tough, and Empire is the anomaly, right? Empire is the one really, really good middle movie in a trilogy, and most trilogies don't have that, right? You know, like it's really hard to do a good middle movie. So right. I think that's the thing about this one, is it kind of feels like it's not a movie, you know, because if you watch it by itself, you're like, well, what happened? You know, it doesn't have that feeling of like, when we started here and we ended here and this guy, you know, it doesn't have that because it's a middle movie. It's supposed to leave you at the end of it being like, well, what happens next? That's the point of it. You know, like, it doesn't resolve, but it's not supposed to. So I think that's kind of why it doesn't feel like the best one. You know, I don't know. I think I can kind of see both of your points, but I do think it is a little bit elevated above Episode 1, just because Episode 1 has things besides the Darth Maul duel and the pod race, because those scenes I love so much. But
they're both fantastic scenes.
Yeah.
Both fantastic scenes. Yeah. I would say when it comes to Star Wars movies, this is the weakest opening by far.
Mhm.
Like like everything else starts with something. Like we discussed episode 1 last week, right? The opening was you guys really liked it, where I thought this is the weakest one because the ship. I'm big. I'm a big non-fan of all the Naboo clean, slick ships because nothing else in the universe is clean, slick, and I see it and it's like I always thought it was boring. Well, the first time I saw it, it's still a boring ship, and it just doesn't really capture my
But you
mind.
always know that they're from Naboo, though, right? Like that. That's kind of the.
Sure. Yeah, I know, but when you see a Star Destroyer, you always know that's from the Empire, right? There was never a question of it, right? When you saw a Rebel blockade, or you never questioned it was from the Rebels or not, right?
Mhm.
I understand is why in the whole entire galaxy everything's kind of rough and rugged, except for Naboo, everything's clean and sleek.
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying in episode 2, it's kind of a continuation, right? So it's like 10 years later, I believe, because Anakin's 10 years older.
Mhm.
And it takes a different tone, right? So you see more of the, I always like to Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship as like a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
And I know they're kind of like, Anakin says at one point that Obi-Wan is the closest thing he has to a father, but they're more brothers, in my opinion, how they interact. And that's all excellent to me. Like I find that all strong, kind of the whole change, and Anakin's older and we can kind of get on with it. And then, so now we're getting more into the story being of intrigue and like a spy movie, investigation movie. And thinking about it, I think what really made it weaker to me, that took me out of the movie each time, was the dialogue between Anakin and Padme on
Naboo.
On Naboo. It kind of took me out, where I watched it twice before we did this. The second time I was fast forwarding through those scenes.
It gets a little cringy. So that dialogue, like sometimes like he says things and you're like, ooh,
I could wish away my feelings.
Yeah.
That's a really
kind of
bad
creepy guy. He's kind of creepy guy.
It's almost like he's never heard of the Me Too movement too. That he was really creepy to her, right? Like, touching her without permission and just like, yeah.
So yeah, no, and definitely watching like from a girl's perspective too. Like there are some moments where you're like, ooh, that red alert, kind of.
Like he was one time, the first time, like looking at her, like kind of undressing her with his eyes too. It's like, whoa, like that's really.
Well, and she even says at the beginning, stop it, you're making me uncomfortable. Like she says that. But here's the thing, though. He bursts into her room with a lightsaber and like cuts those things off of her, like saving her life. Like, okay, if you're a girl, like that's pretty hot. Like.
Nothing like a man that could kill insects off you with a lightsaber. I love it.
You know what I mean? Like, so I get, yeah, the dialogue's cringy. He does some really weird things, but they do also slip in some of those things where he does get to save her and these kind of, bodice ripping romance novel type of ways. Like they do sneak in some of those moments where it's like, okay, I can kind of see it. I can kind of see how she would have those kind of feelings build, because he does present himself to be that, like he does transition from being the kid to being the like, oh, okay, I get it. Like
I just wish it was done more in a subtle way, where he wasn't so like, how you doing? And
I know,
like when he's meditating and she comes up and she goes to leave because she's like, oh, he's busy. And when they're on Naboo, and he's like, don't go.
Soothing.
Your presence is soothing. And I was like, oh, I was like, man, how come this feels like Larry from Three's Company right now?
Right,
like I just don't. It's so weird.
When I talk about George Lucas, sorry, go ahead, Jason. You haven't a chance.
No,
to say it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it was forced. Like they're both forcing, and I agree with what everybody's saying. And when I watched it too, and kind of like with the Phantom Menace, like because we've known for a long time, like Hayden Christensen takes a lot for this performance. And when we just did the Phantom Menace recently, and now when I watch Clones, I tried to watch everybody else though too, and I'm like. And once again, I'm like, now Natalie is an amazing human in real life. She's an amazing actress, so I'm not ripping on her. But I'm like, man, she was so just blah to me in this movie, just like in Phantom Menace too. So I'm like, Hayden was very awkward in the dialogue and all that. But I'm like, he did try to emote sometimes. And I'm like, and once again, I'm like, Amidala's just nothing. There's nothing there. Like
compared to Phantom Menace, she was up. In Phantom Menace, she's a 1. Like when it comes to emotion, at least she was a 3 this time. I thought
maybe, yeah. No, you could.
3.
It's fair to say. But she's like, even all his with the sand people and all that. I was like, which I actually thought was that whole sequence. I thought was actually pretty good. And then he was, like all intense or everything, and he's telling her all this stuff, and once again, she's so muted. Like I'm like, I want to see some life, and I'm not putting it all on her.
Well,
But
it's not her. It's not her. It's like that's it all falls on George. Again, I talked about last week.
Oh no, I know.
Yeah,
right. It's George's.
I definitely think that was
the
direction.
character.
She was given direction to be extremely reserved and extremely, because that was who she was supposed to be. Like that's
That's what I'm saying. Like it's not. I'm not putting this on Natalie as the actress, the person. She's a very talented, and amazing human being, even just her life. But it's on George. But it's like George, again, pull something out of everybody. Just give this a little more life, and you improve everything tremendously.
That scene though with the sand people though, there is that moment when Anakin is holding his mom, right? And he does the whole like the stay with me mom, and he smiles at her, kind of thing. Like that is a brilliant little piece of acting right there. Like that is really, really good. That's actual good emoting. That's good, moment of drama where it's, he's, that was actually really good. And I know he does get a lot of crap for the movie, but that is a really touching scene, and it's done really well.
That entire thing with the sand people.
Mm-hmm.
If we talked about what everybody's favorite scenes, like that would be in there with me. It was actually the whole sequence. And I'm like, and he took heat for that. And I thought the same thing, that exact moment. I watched that. I watched some of it this morning too, as well as last night. And I'm like, that whole sequence, Hayden Christensen's he's doing what he can, at least.
Yeah.
With all that,
even when he was, when he found his mother and he walked back, and he's carrying her and everyone's kind of looking like, ugh. And
he gave a little death to everybody, right? Like
And I don't know if this is what the direction, like he was like, this is, George was like, this is what you're thinking when you're bringing her up. But for me, all I saw was, look, I came and I did this. How come you didn't do this? You know what I mean? It was like, my mother was alive. You couldn't save her. Like what it was just kind of like anger towards everyone that was there.
Yeah.
Like you were part of this. And I love that.
His little rant he did afterwards too, when he's fixing the machine, like like I thought that was I remember watching the first time. I was really like that. There's many times where he's ranting and he's raving, he's just acting like a child, which I thought was awkward for a viewer. It was also awkward for the people around him. Like you can tell, right? All the characters, right? Like, well, this is really unprofessional. But that rant when he's talking to Padme there, when he fixed that machine and blames Obi-Wan and all this stuff, it was like, wow, that was really cool. And it had the Empire March come up in the background, the music wise, right? Like, it was so cool. Like one of the conversations, sorry, that I think was one of the best for me was when Padme's told that she's got to go to Naboo. They're gonna put her there, and Anakin's is gonna escort her, and so she's packing. She's all angry, like, this is stupid. I need to be here, and I'm on the council, etc. And it was like one of the best lines that Anakin said in that film was, sometimes we must do what we're asked to do. Like I forget what the actual line is. Basically, sometimes our duties, we have to do things that we don't like. And I thought, wow. And even how he delivered it was really, it wasn't like forced or pushed. It was just, you could see that it was something that he learned, and he was just saying it nicely. And then she kind of derailed it a little bit, where she's like, wow, you're mature now. Look how much you've grown. And almost like, you're not the little boy anymore. Yeah. But then again, 2 seconds later, he's like, Obi-Wan doesn't think so. And this sucks. And they all think I'm a kid and I'm better than everyone. And it just blew it in the second half of that scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's why I think we talked about last week how all the comedy, comic relief in episode 1 just kind of fell flat. Where I thought maybe George needed a writing team. I thought the same way this one when it comes to the romantic scenes or the building the romance between Anakin and Padme, where he could have used a writing team to help maybe get through that dialogue and help make it more natural than so forced than what it was and so awkward for the audience to watch through it, sort of thing. Like where. I think just some writing would have helped a bit more, just to help smooth it out. And just, and this one, I give credit. There's less stupid jokes until when C-3PO comes around at the end.
Yeah,
and then
there's some bad ones.
Like really, in the whole entire movie, there's nothing, where I talked extensively about episode 1. There's so much excessive stuff that doesn't need to be there. Everything was going really good in Clone Wars until 3PO came up in that robot manufacturer place, and it's like, oh my goodness me! It was unwatchable.
The puns are so bad.
It's so bad. It just ruined everything.
It sidetracks the entire.
This is such a drag.
It's like
or
we have some cool stuff going on, and you sit there kind of waiting just to get through the sequence. Like, can we just get right back to the drama and the action, the real stuff? Like, what is this? Like,
if they cut that out, it really. I can't think of flawless movie, but it's a stronger movie. You get rid of that stupid stuff, right? And just see 3PO going through all the machinery. It just looks so. Again, give credit because they're doing something that no one else did. They're paving the way for Marvel, and they're paving the way for all the other stuff that Thanos nowadays, right? But that whole scene with 3PO is getting thrown around the machines just looks so, because it's unrealistic. Because his body doesn't move like that ever, and also now he is. It just looks so bad, so bad.
So I just want to change gears a little bit because I think I started it. We came a little hot against Attack of the Clones. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some of the other aspects of the film that make it great. And offline, Jen made a good comment to us about John Williams, and we wanted to let her kind of talk about music, which, in the film industry, it's the music really that helps make a movie as well. And certainly John Williams and his music really helped make Star Wars what it is, as opposed to what they originally had planned was kind of that 70s whole sci-fi music. And I think it really helped. So, Jen, maybe you can explain to us what you did a little bit online.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys let me talk about Star Wars and music and John Williams, I will always talk about it because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So real quick, because I'll try to make it. This movie is a really, really great example of why John Williams is so great. And the prequels are all a really good example of why John Williams is so great. But so what makes John Williams different than a lot of modern day composers and stuff is he uses a writing technique called leitmotifs. So when you think of John Williams music, or when you think of movies, that you can hum things from, like Jaws or Indiana Jones or E.T. or Superman, Indiana Jones, like dun da dun da dun da da. You recognize it right away. You're like, oh yeah, that's Indiana Jones. I know exactly what that is. And Star Wars has the same thing, but it's a little different in Star Wars because he uses a leitmotif. Basically, is a string of notes that is easily recognizable that gets used all over and over and over again. So John Williams, the Force theme, or the Force leitmotif, is the like when Luke is standing, on Tatooine, looking out at the suns and stuff like that, that real deep moving thing. So anytime somebody mentions the Force, you get those little string of notes together, right? Like that's what gets used. It's really deep and it's impactful, and he uses it in that way. He uses the music as a storytelling device, which is, really cool. So that's one of the things that John Williams does that's so neat. But in the prequels, he does all sorts of really cool things. So like when Anakin is on his way out to find the Sand People, or to find the Tusken Raiders, that took his mom and stuff, you notice it's the Duel of the Fates.
Yes, I did. I noticed that last night.
Yeah. So it's that big dramatic piece from when the fight with Darth Maul and stuff like that. So it's that same going back to that big dramatic moment again. And so it's bringing you back to that place. But then, so this movie brings the, in another theme, I'm sorry, I'm going really, really fast because I love talking about this stuff and I get really excited. But it brings in the love theme, which is called Across the Stars. And so that's that theme that plays the first time Anakin and Padme kiss when it shuts off real fast. You know, it's that really awkward. The music starts to swell, then she pulls away, and the music stops. You know, kind of thing. And it's that thing. But it's also that's their love theme, and it's really cool because it gets used throughout the movie, and it's really, really beautiful piece of music. It's really, really, and as you watch the movie, Wagnerian opera. Yeah, James, you recognize it. So. Yes, Wagnerian. So John Williams writes in the comments here, you have James is talking about Wagnerian opera, which John Williams writes in the Wagnerian style, which Wagner was wrote the Ring Cycle opera, which the Ring Cycle opera has the Ride of the Valkyrie theme in it, which every time the Valkyrie would appear on stage, you would get the da 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 da, which all of because of Bugs Bunny. So exactly. So Wagner created that style. Wagner created the leitmotifs, and that's what John Williams uses. That's that style of composing that he does. So every time the Force, is on screen, he uses the Force theme. Every time Padme and Anakin have a moment, he uses the Across the Stars theme. Every time Anakin is going to confront some darkness, some big foe, we get the Duel of the Fates theme, because fate is dueling. This is so that's what's really cool, is you have these reoccurring, and then there's actually another really, really cool move in the music. Then I will end my thoughts here, but at the very, very end of this movie, when you have Mace Windu and Palpatine and everybody looking out over the clone army because of everything that's happened in this movie, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, that what has happened and how this clone army has come about, but they're all looking out over there. You have the Imperial March is playing. The help me out here. That one. The one that everybody is. The Imperial March.
Yeah, the Imperial March. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Anakin. The same one they played when Anakin. Yeah.
It's being played for the first time, but you're looking at the good guys, which is the first time that you're looking out at who is the good guys. At this point in the movie,
they put that tune right after Anakin's rant too.
But not in the same way. Not in the same way.
No, not in the same way. It's more subtle. There's a little hinting of foreshadowing.
Exactly. But this is the first time you're getting that full suite. You're getting the full orchestral suite with the Imperial theme, but you're looking at the good guys, and that's a really cool musical. It's a really cool musical tool to use it in that way, to show you that something's wrong here. That that. Something's not right, that your good guys have just done this thing, but something's not right. Well, and he's using music to tell you that story.
Well, and the visuals back it up, because of course they hone in on Palpatine at the very end, where they're kind of closing in on him, right? With the music sort of thing. So it's amazing tool of foreshadowing for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But that is that use of those leitmotifs, those use of it. So it's really cool if you ever have a chance to go back and listen to the soundtracks and just make note of what theme you're listening to at the time. Because he did it in the same thing with the sequels too, right? Rey has a theme, Kylo has a theme, like different things like that. That it's that little, like Kylo's is the da 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 da. So every time Kylo's on screen, you've got that, but John Williams also, if you want to go deeper and deeper and deeper, he uses particular intervals between the notes and particular instruments when he's trying to tell a different story too. So there's layers and layers and layers, that John Williams, what makes him as wonderful, as he is there's all sorts of different things in there, as deep as you want to go. And I would love to talk about that kind of stuff, but it's really, really interesting. And that's what makes Star Wars music different than like music in, just a general adventure movie. That's what makes it so different.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome.
I mean,
awesome.
It's awesome, and I mean, every Star Wars film, he's been like that from the very beginning, where each character, has his or her theme, and then what you're describing, how it ties in the story elements, and it's more. And I think James even just said something too, like it's. But I was going to say as well, you can, the music maybe you could even argue is more powerful than visually as well, because there's an emotional tie to that you get with music that you don't get with anything else. And to what Todd pointed out too, I thought it was powerful. Yeah, when that little bit of the Imperial March played for Anakin right after that rant, and I was thinking about that too. And I'm like, ooh. And it ties it not only at the end of the movie, like Jen pointed out, where you see Palpatine, everybody. It ties Anakin to Palpatine in that way in Attack of the Clones, even, which is a powerful moment.
Yeah, for as the music goes in the movies, there's certain songs that have made me have goosebumps. You know what I mean? That really get you, like Duel of the Fates, like in Episode 1 when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul are all fighting, when it kind of comes into them on kind of all the walkways without railings, fighting, and it's just that whole, when they come into it, that whole Duel of the Fates, or even as a kid seeing New Hope at the medal ceremony, that whole song when Luke and Han come walking down to get the medals just gives me goosebumps even to this day. You know what I mean? So, and it's on old guy skin now, so it's even grosser. Also, I'm just looking at another comment from James in the chat. If you want to join the chat, and please, we'll answer any other questions. James is saying his favorite part of the clone army marching off to war is if you look at Bail Organa. Yeah, that's right. When he pounds his fist lightly on the rail, kind of showing, basically democracy has been lost to this kind of. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I mean, the music in the films, and again, it could have been a lot worse. Like, at the time, sci-fi movies, and it would have been that kind of cheesy 70s space stuff with maybe like keyboards and
synthesizers,
and like really cheesy, corny. And I'm glad they kind of went with and that also reminds me of New Hope. I'm so happy that they cut out that scene of Luke with his friends at Tashi Station, because it felt so dated to the 70s. And I know that Mark Hamill had said that was one of his favorite scenes in the whole movie. He was sad to see it get cut out. But man, would that have changed the tone? It was so weird, 70s hippie something or another. But anyways, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I was going to say a couple things that I wrote down that I really liked about Episode 2 also, just real quick. The Coruscant car chase scene, or whatever those are, not cars. But that was just a really, really fun scene, just standalone. Really cool.
Very well crafted for sure. Absolutely.
And did anyone else think it looked like Coruscant and that whole thing looked like really clean Blade Runner? Like if Blade Runner had been clean.
Idea, Luke is from what I understand, Lucas even made mention of that he wanted Coruscant to be like a larger Blade Runner, but that was with intent.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I had just watched Blade Runner recently and was like, wow, that's like if somebody had actually like cleaned the streets. Like that's what it looked.
I thought it was Fifth Element. Looked like Fifth Element to me. But you're talking about the streets.
Yeah. Like Fifth Element too. Actually, very much Fifth Element. Oh, with the floating cars and stuff. Like very much Fifth Element. For sure. Yeah, which I love that movie. That's another one of those movies that I love so much.
It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah, it's so good. But we're talking about Episode 2.
Yes, Episode 2. So that was one. I love the car chase scene. I loved everything about that. I thought that was really fantastic.
Considering a very slow beginning and then that hits pretty quick on, it's very, really good.
I like that. And then also I really like the scene when they discover that the clone army has already been created. And Yoda and Mace Windu were kind of talking among themselves, and they like realize that they have to cover this up and realize that they have to kind of fake it, that they knew that this was already happening because they can't reveal that they didn't know that it was happening.
Right.
That kind of like that says a lot about what was happening, and that was a really good to put that in. You know what I mean? Like that. I like that scene, the way that is, because it's that. Reveals a lot about the Jedi, and it reveals a lot about why the Jedi had to go down the way that they did. Because I personally like that theory of that the Jedi turned into something they weren't supposed to. And that, there's a line at the beginning of this movie too, where Mace Windu says, "Oh, we're peacekeepers, not soldiers," and eventually, of course, the Jedi become absolutely soldiers and generals and, things. But I like that scene where they're like, "Oh no, we have to cover this up because if we don't, we'll have more enemies," So they realize that it's small. Nobody really knows about it. So they have to kind of, almost pretend that they have to go along with this now, because if they don't go along with it, it's going to make them look even worse,
Right.
So,
and, speaking further to that, and I've mentioned this in other podcasts, is one of the best lines in the movie is when Mace and Yoda and Obi-Wan are talking, and they're talking, and I think Obi-Wan says something about, Anakin, he's so arrogant and stuff. And it was a quote that I love, and it speaks to what you're saying. It just seems like how the Jedi have lost their purpose. I'll pull this up, and it's like the arrogance. And Yoda says, yes, it's a flaw more and more common among Jedi. Too sure of themselves they are, even the older, more experienced ones. So basically, he was saying is like, it seems to be a common trait amongst Jedi now to be arrogant, and no one is focused.
Well, that's when Dooku is talking to Obi-Wan, and he's like, "What if I told you this is happening?" Obi-Wan's like, "No, nope."
Right.
Just like, and like, you could have stopped it right here, man. Like right here. Like if you had just, or not, he couldn't have stopped it right there. But like, obviously he goes and he tells the Jedi Council what he was told. And the Jedi Council was like, no, that can't be true. So like everybody was arrogant all along the way. But like Obi-Wan is so sassy and that's his thing, but just his whole interaction with Dooku where he's like, "No, we would know about it." Like,
so
it's just.
So Jen, we talked about some stuff that was really good. I want to talk about some stuff that I, when I first watched it, really bothered me, and when I watch it again, still bothers me. It's the name drops of Sifo-Dyas. Sorry, just the name drop. Like, who is he? Like, it really doesn't really explain anything unless you go, read some books, or what I'm saying. Like, and then Darth Tyrannus. Like, I assumed it was Count Dooku. But again, it was never really ever explained. So they're doing name drops for people you have no idea who are. And so I did some reading just to find out this morning about Sifo-Dyas, and apparently he was a Jedi gifted with vision. I guess he could see stuff in the future, sort of thing. So that's why he started, which is really cool. Which I think would have been really helpful to explain some of this sort of stuff in the movie, because when you're watching it, you just kind of get lost. Like, who is this? You know what I'm saying? It just seemed kind of. I just thrown in there randomly, sort of thing, so you can just because sort of thing. That's one of the problems with episode 2. I saw is the fact that, again, the name drops just still don't make any sense to me. Like, really, just it's pulled out of nowhere, and just I would like to have seen them went more in depth or something, or introduced this character 10 years prior to it, sort of thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, just that's as a little small flaw, because I really did like this movie far more than episode 1, and I want to talk about my favorite shot. One of my favorite shots in the movie, probably I would say maybe of all the movies, is when the battle happens. The clones are there, and one of the Federation ships is taken off. They shoot it down, it hits, and all this dust flies.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he has the stormtroopers walking through this dust, and all you see is green blasters and red blasters and blue blasters flying everywhere, and you see the robots in the background. I just love that shot for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, in the battle, what that felt like to me. The way that the camera moved in and moved, it looked semi-raw. It looked like one of those reporters that are embedded with soldiers. Filming. And I remember seeing it in the theater for the first time. I was like, wow, this just feels like. And at the time, when the first Iraq war happened, and they had these reporters embedded with soldiers with these new things called camera phones and stuff. And I remember that it was kind of funny, and that's what they were trying to do. It was nowhere near as good, but that's what it felt like to me. Like you were in the battle.
Even the perspective, the camera's on the ground, and it's looking up, and you see the feet walking by the camera, right? It's almost like, it was a stationary camera that somebody threw on the ground. It was just a great action shot, visually challenging. It would have been like next to impossible. Like, it really, like, what the mechanics they did to pull that shot off, because everything's CGI to make it look that good and that realistic. it would have been massive. And so that's why I really appreciate the tools when it comes to building films and making things look realistic. And all the things that maybe didn't look so great in the film, that was executed to perfection. It's an amazing shot. And it only lasts like 2 seconds, but it's just like, wow. There's that and the follow-up shot afterwards. They both had a really ground perspective with all the dust around, which I thought was amazing. Just blew me away. It still does today.
There's a lot of really beautiful shots. That whole battle, and I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about how, man, you give Lucas that throughout all of Star Wars, that he really orchestrates the major battles really well. Just what you're saying, like the individual shots to put you in the scene, and then dramatically, there's a nice arc. There's a story within the story with the major battles, and Attack the Clones is like right up there with them for sure. Yeah.
Well, again, it just shows again the flaws of the movie. It's just how he pioneers everything, right? Like something that epic, nothing was done to that scale before, right? And then now he does it. I prefer actors in suits opposed to CG clones. Like the CG,
sure,
but
practical.
It's practical. Practical just looks better, especially when you watch the movie again. But still, the credit is without what he did there, you wouldn't have your Infinity War, you wouldn't have your Endgame that look fantastic today. Like he's a pioneer. He revolutionized the film industry back in '77 with A New Hope, and he did the same thing with the prequels too. Like everything, like right. the most recent trilogy looks amazing because of what he did in the prequels, because of what he did in the original prequels, right? Not prequels, a trilogy, right? So,
right.
pioneer. Again, that's where your hat goes off. Like, did he lose touch with writing? Yes. Did he lose touch with directing? Possibly, but he still is a visionary who actually just changed the boundaries of what you can do in film. So,
absolutely. So said. Yes.
So guys, we've talked about dialogue and some of the negative stuff, or like interaction between characters. But one of the things I loved about the film was kind of these two guys, kind of the interaction between Obi-Wan and Anakin. And I'm just wondering.
Except for that scene. That scene's the worst scene
of
them
it's so
together.
Cute. I love that scene.
When he laughs, he goes, like I saw in the theater the first time. Oh my goodness me, that is terrible.
I think he was trying to do an impression of Alec Guinness. Doing an Alec Guinness impression.
No, I thought it was cute. I thought it was endearing. Like he was. Yeah.
No, the first time you see them together it's that little laugh. It's so cringy. I remember the first time watching, going, "Oh man, that was the first time I saw it."
I thought it was a good reaction. I thought it was establishing kind of like how they were, and mm-hmm. I think that with that laugh, I think Obi-Wan was kind of teasing.
Yeah, I think he was teasing too.
I think tease. It'd be like me doing that to you, going or something.
I think
sure.
It rolls right into the car chase scene with their dialogue where he's like, sorry, master, I couldn't find one in a color I liked with the open cockpit or whatever. Like the whole thing. Like,
I think to me, the elevator scene was their first day on set together. And that was the first thing they pounded off. And it looked to me, it just didn't, even today, I would say, let's reshoot that scene if I was George. It's just, to me, it was flat. It was, and again, that's my perception. If you guys loved it, fantastic. I think it's so cringy, and it set their relationship off really rough. It got better as it went along, like the car chasing, like you're saying, fixed it all. But
I think
it had sass.
Yeah,
I think it was like that little chuckle was a sassy chuckle. That's me.
Yeah, I like that. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie connected to that is when they're chasing. I forget the name of the character.
Sam Wiesel.
And when they're going into that bar on Coruscant, and I thought to me it was very, very slick scene, and
the foreshadowing that went on in that scene.
Yeah, and when Anakin is walking
to be the
around,
death of me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
That's right. When
Anakin on the nose foreshadowing. It was sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, Steve. I'm sorry.
No. No,
they're going into the bar.
True. No. I just like the scene when Anakin is walking around looking,
mm-hmm.
And just how the cameras, you're kind of seeing the locals on Coruscant, and I think that Anakin was in his or the actor, right?
Hayden.
Hayden, yes, he was in his. I think he did a really good job there, right? Being kind of like he was kind of in his element in that scene, and although the death stick scene with Obi-Wan and that character, that was maybe cringy, and it's Obi-Wan seems to have a real knack for taking out bad guys' arms that are trying to kill them in bars. I thought it was so funny. It was like, oh, he did it, 30 years later, 20 years later.
Have you ever seen? There's somebody on the internet made like a thing that it's like arms lost in Star Wars. Like there is somebody made like a little infographic of like arms lost or something like that, on screen arms lost. I've seen it somewhere.
Do you know what? Well, actually, it's not just that. It actually goes to the whole entire Marvel universe.
Does it?
Oh yeah, like everything pays homage
funny.
to the arms being cut off. Like the Winter Soldier, one arm. A lot of the characters in Marvel Universe lose an arm or a hand. Even like in Age of Ultron, when they cut off Ulysses' arm, they cut off. It's all the same thing. It all pays homage to the arms in Star Wars. It's if you check that out too. So they're closely tied together when it comes to what happens. So yes, you're right. So it not only did it carry through Star Wars, it carries through the Marvel Universe too. They pay homage to Star Wars. Just so you guys know.
I mean, I guess that is a really effective method. If you had a lightsaber, that would be a really effective disarming method.
I don't think there's anything better than disarming a person by actually removing the arm. Actually,
well, has anyone
rather than trying to knock it out of their hand, just
well,
take it off.
That's the thing. Has anyone practiced swords, like real sword? Like God, there was a few years there where I was training in like German longsword and like Italian rapier, not Olympic fencing. And,
I took fencing. I did.
Right, and see, and that's the thing. It's like an attack on the hand. So when we would be sparring, an attack on the hand would mean it would be like a stoppage, because you're like, well, a real sword would go through the hand with very little effort, and so your hand would be taken out. So it was a really effective thing. And as fighting with a giant laser beam, I'm surprised that almost every single one of them didn't have one hand or like two robotic hands, because it has to be, even in practice.
That's true.
They're Jedis, so I guess they do have the Jedi Force power that protects them. Their skill set, right? So they have to be really, really good, I guess. Not lose limbs and training.
And I guess they weren't fighting a whole bunch of Sith, right? It'd be like they were fighting against blasters or like other kind of melee weapons, if anything. Yeah. So
exactly, yeah.
Let's move on. I was excited about meeting Jango Fett, the whole Camino thing, and the interaction between Jango and Obi-Wan was one of my favorite.
Yeah,
they're like a foot apart, and each one knows. It's that classic scene where the enemy, like the two spies, like in a Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
The bad guy knows Bond is who Bond is, and vice versa, and they're just
Have you ever been as far in as Coruscant?
It's true.
Have you been there recently? Maybe
once or twice.
It's super. It's good. It's good.
It's awesome. And that
super
whole
high
word,
tension, but very everyone's keeping it casual.
Camino is my favorite stuff in the movie.
Yeah,
I love everything about Camino.
That was another thing I wrote down.
Django
yeah. That was another thing I wrote down that I loved, is I love the expansion of we see Camino, we see Geonosis, we see way more of Coruscant, we see Naboo again, we see that was the cool thing about this movie, is it expanded your visual
and Tatooine again.
And Tatooine again. So that was one cool thing about this movie. It does give you that variety. But anyway, Geonosis. Those scenes are really, really cool. And the seismic blasts too. Those are
seismic blasts. Yeah, those are really good. Actually, there's a video game where you actually, what was it now? I think it's Road Squadron. That you can use Slave One, and you can actually launch those sonic blasts. It's
sonic,
it's quite awesome.
The sound of that was so cool.
Again, sound design again. That sound design for that. Yeah. When it explodes, it goes deathly quiet. You hear nothing, right? It sucks all the sound in, and it's
so
just
cool.
Quite brilliant.
Sonic charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I don't get Count Dooku's final escape ship, the big sail ship.
The sailor.
I don't get that, but I don't know how to get a lot of speed. But
Solar
sailor.
It had a solar. Is that what it's called? The solar sail.
Yeah, I think
It was
Right.
an interesting design. So I'm almost like, we could do it. So let's do it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I just think it's showing the variety in the universe. It's like when I see people who are either new fans or not Star Wars fans, and they criticize all the people walking around in capes and cloaks, and you're like, that's dumb. And I always have to point out, it's like, but this is what would be important fashion maybe in that universe, just like us tying a big bunch of material around our neck and calling it a tie. It makes no sense to wear that. Why are we wearing that? It's stupid. It serves no purpose. When you have a button at the top of your shirt, you can just button that, right? Or who cares about ties anymore? So I always find when, especially with the clothing, like, why would they wear cloaks or why would they wear these different things? And I just think that what Lucas is trying to do with the universe was make it so that, what one place we think the ships look good, maybe another would be just a different design that aesthetically they find pleasing.
I just didn't think it was very practical. That's all. If you're trying to escape away, having a big, huge sail is pretty noticeable. That's all I'm trying to say. Just
No.
That I'm not trying. I understand the whole ship. Just doesn't seem like a practical getaway ship, a sail ship.
Well, Todd,
space.
I'm just
kidding. There's many things like you break down this movie. Can you look at episode 1? I thought in the middle there's a lot of nothing happening. Where I really think they used the pacing well for this movie, having the whole Jango Fett and Camino in the middle. Right? It really broke up the movie well. You get to follow all these different characters. Movies about pacing, right? You have to have a strong beginning. You want to have a good middle, and you want to have a exciting, great ending. Where I thought this movie hit those 3 beats really well. Where Phantom Menace, they used Jar Jar a lot in the middle to help carry the movie. And I know that the pod race, but it just wasn't it. The pod race wasn't character development, where there was character development with the whole entire Jango Fett, Obi-Wan on Camino. So it progressed the story more than a pod race did. And so that's why I thought it was much more effective storytelling all the way through.
What do you guys think of that fight? To me, it was
I love it.
It's just that classic.
That's one of my favors in Star Wars.
It shows
just the setting.
Good.
Oh yeah.
How good.
Well, and the levels they fight on, that's so cool that Obi-Wan goes over the edge and they come. Just everything about it was so cool that it wasn't like a single plane fight. Like it felt really neat. Like I just like that it wasn't just like they fought on one surface. Like it was just that they used the whole environment too. You know what I mean? That it was on water and there was rain and there was everything. It was just really cool.
And it was
I liked it, but it wasn't near my favorite of Star Wars franchise. Or
I just thought it was just really neat. Like that was.
It was a little rougher though. It showed even a Jedi getting in a little uglier. I mean, there was actual kicks and like punches thrown.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan went down and like I liked it. It is one of my favorite fights actually. Just maybe just the visual aesthetic and the environment was so cool. But just that you saw a Jedi Knight get in like just a raw fight, still using his saber though, but it just showed like a comparable opponent could actually turn a Jedi into like it got ugly. He got dragged through the rain and they fell and just all this stuff. So a Jedi is not always going to be the smooth, perfectly orchestrated battle.
Well,
so
just to point this out, it wasn't Obi-Wan versus Jango. Like what really helped turn the tide was he had Boba Fett in Slave One shooting blasters at him too, which kind of threw him off too, right? Like he got separated from his lightsaber. That's the reason why the fight was a little bit more closely, because let's face it, Obi-Wan was separated from the lightsaber. If not, it would be the same kind of outcome that happened with Mace Windu at the end.
Well, they do really they make a really big. If you watch the scene with Mace Windu though, they really do, like his jetpack is sparking. Like his knee blasters are sparking. Like they make a point of like at the very end, Jango only has his blaster.
Yeah,
like everything else on him is malfunctioning.
Right.
Yeah.
So he
Jango
can't
just
take
got
off.
Annihilated by the creature. Whatever.
That creature thing.
But I mean,
like
circumstance.
the rhino
you guys know
thingy?
circumstance is part of fighting.
And
But
that's the thing is that's why
it's-
Mace just easily takes him out, is because none of his other tools are available to him, and that's why it
Jango
ends
was
so
not,
quickly.
like,
They
at
make
his
that very
weakest.
obvious. Yeah.
And Mace Windu was supposed to be tops in the Star Wars universe pretty much at that time.
I just don't think it would have been that close of a fight if Obi-Wan had his lightsaber. That's why there was a big thing, the separation of the lightsaber, right? Which makes more sense. I don't think.
But Jango took it out though. You got to give credit for Jango taking care of the saber.
all of his gadgets and
absolutely.
stuff are what made him really, really good too. His use of the gadgets, his use of his flamethrower, his use of his jetpack, his use of his like arm torpedoes or whatever. Like, I mean, he was really, really good with all of his gadgets. So that's why when he didn't have all of those, it really kind of
right. But this is the evolution of the Mandalorians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like back in history, thousands of years before this, right? The Mandalorians were walking over planets until they ran into
Jedi.
these wizards, the Jedi. And basically, from what I understand from reading, is that they adjusted the tools in their fighting style to fight against these Jedi. So basically, what is evolved are the tools to fight against them, right? So you have, where the Jedis have force push or force pull. Well, they have those ropes that they shoot out and grab you, or the jetpacks, right, to get away from quickly, or it's just the maneuverability that the Jedi have, et cetera, right? So it's like their whole evolution of their equipment came from trying to fight the Jedi in ancient times, or like long before, right? And I guess it just kind of applied and worked into their modern times. So, so I mean, when you take those tools off, I mean, they just have to go by their own fighting knowledge, but they can't fight against the Jedi, powers without the equipment. And for me, the fight seemed pretty equal. Like Jango and Obi-Wan were pretty equal in that match. Yeah. And like no one really won, I guess. So it was smart. So
I think that these movies with the Mandalorian show, though, these movies do have like that more depth too. Like that's, obviously we said it before, like the scenes with the Tusken Raiders speaking sign language and things like that. You're like, oh, actually some of the tribes were more people-y and Anakin. So that kind of gives a little more context to the scene of Anakin like slaughtering a whole tribe, even though they had his mom and killed her. Like they were obviously one of the bad ones, but still, like it gives a little more thing there. But still, some of this other stuff with Jango and Boba and the clones and things like that, it gives the Mandalorian gives that little extra color to this movie too, which is kind of cool, because I know some of the criticisms back in the day with this movie was people were so angry about, well, we didn't want a backstory for Boba, we wanted him to be this lone mysterious Mandalorian, we didn't want all this and we didn't ask for that. Remember, like people were super sour about it and everything, and it's like no, now we've got cool Boba again. Like we've got so it's kind of cool now that to go back and watch this and be like, hey, that guy, he shows up again, I know him. It's kind of so it's kind of cool to see the actor to know that he's gonna show up again.
Was Jango actually a Mandalorian? I thought Boba wasn't.
Did you watch the Mandalorian show yet?
Yes, I have.
They actually explained that outright. So when the Mandalorian when Boba gets his armor back, he shows his data chain or whatever.
Yes,
And he says like, my father was a foundling. So so his father was. So that's how like they retconned. Like that's how they turned Jango actually into a Mandalorian, is they made him a foundling, which made him a Mandalorian. Like
I'm really glad they did that too. Actually,
me too. They like solved the whole problem. Like thank you, Filoni. Thank you, everybody. Like
it gives a lot of weight to Jango, and then even thus improves his presence in Attack of the Clones to me, and legitimizes even the Obi-Wan confrontation, and then that they'd make a clone out of him.
Absolutely.
So I was really, really happy that was just okay. Good. He is a Mandalorian.
He is a Mandalorian.
It makes him more badass, and makes it all kind of just make a little better sense. It just improves his character.
Oh, 100%. It absolutely does. It was a really good way to solve that problem. It was a really good way to take something like take what was written in the prequels and take, what had kind of, because in the Clone Wars too, I think there's an episode where somebody says Jango wasn't a Mandalorian or something like that. Like it happens in an episode of the Clone Wars where that line of dialogue is in there. And Dave Filoni was like, no, we have to fix this, and actually wrote that into the Mandalorian series. And it just makes that much, much, much better.
So one thing I want to say, because last week you weren't there, Jen, but I was just bad mouthing your character on your shirt, Jar Jar. But here's where I want to say where I thought episode 1, the greatest thing about episode 1 was the manipulation of Darth Sidious and Palpatine. I want to go back again where this is where I get mad about. I'm jumping forward to the Last Jedi with porgs and they're just useless creatures. Where here Jar Jar actually has a huge impact on the story. Right,
Yeah.
like he's manipulated again, because this word shows Palpatine such a master of manipulation. Jar Jar invokes the idea to put Palpatine as in charge of everything. Give him give him all the power, right?
Yep.
And just this is where Jar Jar Binks is a vital character to the storyline, and I thought it was really well done. Where they made less of Jar Jar, but it still had an impactful. He was just a wrote-off character they got rid of. He still served a purpose in the story, and I really loved how that came together. When he presents it, he's like a hero. The whole entire Senate's like, "What a great idea!" Right? And the whole thing is all Palpatine's idea. Manipulated the guy, so it's a key factor in this movie, and that's one thing I really loved when that happened. Everybody's cheering for him, and just that look on Palpatine's face, going, "Oh man, that bastard!" Right? Like he really just screwed everybody, and he's like I just love that master manipulation sort of thing.
Well, it had to come from somebody like Jar Jar, right? It had to come from somebody who wasn't going to question it, like somebody who wasn't a real elected official, somebody who wasn't really going to question the things, because Jar Jar was so trusting and was so in this position where Padme had left him in charge and he felt like he had to do the right thing. So this is the right thing, right? I have to do this because she's left me in charge.
Padme would have done it, right? Too bad Padme wasn't here, because she would definitely do this.
It could have only been him. And so he was absolutely manipulated into that position, like 100%. And it had to be him. And that was
even like Palpatine convincing Padme to go back to Naboo, right? He'd get rid of her, right? Like it was such a well orchestrated plan.
Well, that's why that's why the attack on Padme's life, right? That's why Boba was hired to attack Padme, so that she would have to leave, so that Jar Jar would have to be in that position, so that Jar Jar would have to make that decision. Like that's what
so
happened.
Subtle.
That's
It's so subtle with everything.
Yeah.
And this is like stuff that's happened 10 years ago, getting the clone army starting to build, which is really, really, just really, really cool, right? That's one thing I really love about it, is the whole, as I mentioned last week, is manipulation, and where Jar Jar Binks serves his purpose in the Star Wars universe is he gives the Emperor all his power.
Yep.
It's just what's his official title? Becomes the Supreme Chancellor. Is that what it's called? What was the title of the game? I can't remember. I keep forgetting what it's called.
He gets emergency powers now.
Emergency powers, right? Yes.
Right.
Emergency powers. He is Supreme. Is he Supreme Chancellor yet?
I think he is a Supreme Chancellor.
Supreme Chancellor now.
Yeah.
But then episode 3 is when you see them all back in the Senate chamber, and they're like, "Yeah, he should have given back his emergency powers, and he hasn't." That's the conversation that they have in episode 3.
Spoilers.
Is that? Oh yeah, no, don't talk about that yet.
The amazing thing about the clones overall, and I really just becoming more aware, watching the entire movie. Watching the whole thing play out again, and it's like Palpatine, the entire movie is just, he's sitting back, letting everything simmer. It's already on the way to hell for the Republic. And the entire movie, you think about the movement of the main characters, everyone's a step behind. They're all chasing things that it's already too late.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Right.
It's just because he's not playing that short game. He's playing the long game, right? He knows it's going to take decades, but he's just slowly withering away. Little hints, Anakin, I think you're going to be the greatest Jedi of all time, the most powerful Jedi of all time, even more powerful than Yoda, right? Just all those subtle little things, a little word of encouragement, a little bit of manipulation. It's so good.
Well, what he's doing to the Separatists too, right?
Yeah.
Because he's the one who got the Separatists to start their droid army also.
Yeah.
Right? He's the guy who he got the clone army and he got the droid army. He did both.
Exactly.
So neither one of them knew that they were both being led by the same guy.
And that's what's so amazing.
They're all running around.
Mm-hmm.
He plays everybody like an organ, right? And it's just so. Well, I think
this is why you need to get more deep into Clone Wars, because then you'll see what happened with the banking
I want to.
Federation.
The I'm trying to. The first season is such a slog.
Just
It's
skip
such a
it. Just
slog.
skip it, man. Just
Where should
move
I
on.
jump onto what? Jump onto what? Jump onto what? What should I jump onto?
Just start on season 2 then. Just
Start on
if
season
you're
2.
getting bogged down with season 1, just move on to season
just-
2 so that you can
It
keep
just seems
watching.
so repetitive. Yeah, so that's all. Just
Skip it.
Okay.
I will
A
forgive
lot
you.
is repetitive.
There's that list too of the important episodes if you want
Yeah.
to really
Yes. Yeah.
skip through,
But,
and it's
I
like the
mean,
important
that's-
ones.
But
They actually have that. They have the Ahsoka Essentials on Disney Plus. Where
that
it has-
that would be worth watching, the Ahsoka Essential ones. But there are some good ones too that Ahsoka's not in, about the banking clans and stuff like that, because Padme actually starts to uncover before the events of episode 3 of kind of the financing of who, because you think about that, the creation of these 2 armies and stuff like that, the money, you know what I mean? So
Right.
who's
Wow.
financing them
Where'd it
and
come
stuff
from?
like that. So these banking clans of who's being paid where, and so she starts to kind of uncover the separatists and the Republic and who's paying who and who's getting, it's just, there's more to it there too, because like you can't just start wars without money.
And
I like this banking plan.
anybody else notice that the
Yeah.
banking alien looks like exactly like a banker on Earth?
Totally.
It's just like, well, come on, wouldn't it be a computer that would know and keep numbers really well? I don't know. Just funny that he looked like a banker.
Oh, speaking of characters too, real quick, in episode 2, at the end with the separatists, the guy that looks like the steampunk character, Watt
Tambor.
Tambor or
Watt
whatever.
Tambor.
How cool is that character? Like, I
Yeah.
just love that character.
The big
design.
block guy. You talking about the block guy?
with the dials. The
The translator.
I just-
The Techno
Yeah.
Union.
I just seriously, I
Yeah.
love that character design. I think he is so cool. I think that is just such a neat, like,
I love that he had to
Whoever,
adjust
like-
himself. Like,
yeah. I think that is so fun.
So what we
The
didn't talk
goggles
about
and
is
things like
is
that.
the is Yoda, is Battle Yoda, and his
to me,
fight
that's
with
such a small part
Dooku.
of that movie.
No, but we haven't. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know back in the day, people were like, "Oh, that's really awesome," and Yoda being the great warrior. And later on, there was arguments that I heard where people were like saying that they didn't like it, that they felt that Yoda as a character would be less lightsaber and more force powers, or his strengths were in the other areas, because he didn't, because I think he would even say to Luke, like, the force isn't about raw power or raw fighting. It's about this and that. And so there was the arguments where him spinning around doing his fight with Dooku is awesome, but then on the other side of it, is that Yoda's character? Like, would he have not used
He's a great
force
warrior.
powers? That's what I mean. Would he have used force powers? Would he have like force push, force this, and
Well,
so
he was absorbing the lightning and stuff like that, right? No, there was that was
Right.
there, but I think it comes down to the point where
Well, Dooku says, "Well, this
Yeah.
can only be." Well, he has the
Exactly.
line, the whole thing. Well,
sets it
our powers in the he says like it can only be
we're
resolved
equal.
by
We're equal in our knowledge of the Force. Therefore,
Yeah.
it must be settled with.
the lightsabers.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I like the scene. Like, when it comes to lightsaber fights, it's not the most, because Christopher Lee was Christopher Lee and he couldn't really move. I know they had a stuntman and they superimposed his face on for the wide shots, but it was stylistic. When I watched it again, I didn't like it as much.
he has a lot of
this
that
time, but-
over the head stuff, right? Isn't that the kendo? Or isn't that style? Right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
the
kendo, yeah.
over the head.
Yeah, but even like
Sounds-
when Anakin and Dooku were fighting, there's a lot of close-ups where they're swinging the swords to see the light across their face. They weren't actually doing anything, right?
Right.
It's just one of the most anticlimactic lightsaber fights. I know they're all building up for Yoda. They wanted the Yoda to be the big flashy thing.
Yeah.
But even that just felt repetitive. With Yoda just jumping around just felt repetitive. Just because what can you do with a little character like that? Again, it's still cool. I wasn't impressed with this time as I was the first time seeing it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I like Dooku's style of fighting, and I remember years and years and years ago on the other site some of us were on, we had some people from one of the lightsaber combat groups come on and were talking to us about it, and I had said I felt that Dooku's style was like fencing, like rapier, and they were like, yes. One guy did a paper. He was like, basically, because I found that Dooku was was holding it out more like fencing,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah.
his shots were like, fencing, where it's like shortcuts or thrusts and stuff like that. And
Maybe it was Anakin
where,
that was over the head or something.
yeah, it was the other
Yeah.
ones
Yeah,
that
'cause
were
it's
Yeah,
like
fighting,
one of
Anakin
those-
was over the
yeah,
head.
yeah.
Yeah.
fighting more of, and I know that people out there will know what style of Jedi fighting that is, but it was modeled, from what I understand, on kind of like a fencing or rapier style. And I thought it was really slick because of how he was moving. And I remember seeing that like years later after I had more knowledge of swords. I was like, wait a minute, that seems like fencing to me, and how he was moving and how he was standing. And it was a nice mixture of the different styles, right? Where Obi-Wan and Anakin had kind of more of like a, traditional like kendo, katana, and taking, which was really interesting, how quickly Dooku was able to kind of dispatch them and take them out. I mean, it was kind of Anakin's fault at the same time.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I remember when I first started training in swords, I remember doing a German longsword. So it's like two-handed longsword, big, powerful beasts of a weapon. And then one of my teachers showed up with a rapier, right? This dainty little sword that the musketeers would fly around with. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to kick his ass this time training. And it was like, the rapier is a really deceiving, quick weapon. So it was like, I got my big sword, and every time we would move, boom, boom, every time in the face or in the chest or whatever. And it was this tiny rapier sword, right? It makes sense of the technology back then when it switched. I guess people weren't wearing armor, and then the rapier. So it just felt like Dooku had, in that instance anyways, maybe a superior form of fighting. Plus he was experienced. So anyways.
Yeah. He was supposed to be that, which I love that Obi-Wan line, the Sith Lords are our speciality. And like every time they've encountered a Sith Lord, it's not gone well.
Especially for him, especially for Obi-Wan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because then this happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. But Obi-Wan, just brings the sass.
Brings the sass. Hey, I just wanted to point this out. I noticed a comment from one of our commenters, James. It's a friend of ours, and I just wanted to have this on record on our podcast of a comment he first said. So, James,
I noticed that right away. I didn't want to comment on it, but
this will be in records for everyone. James called me hot, so I just want that out there on
I think
record.
it says a little hot. Always a little hot.
He
Still
is
counts.
downplaying it. He's downplaying it, and I'll just Photoshop that later.
It makes sense to me, though. I understand for sure. Yeah.
Well, you know what? He's only human, and I just wanted that on record before we wrapped up.
Your Jedi powers are great, Steve.
I know they are, just like so. But I'm looking forward. This is on. I'm really looking forward to the next movie because I think this wraps it all up, and there's no way we could say that there's any kind of weak link in this next one, because I mean, even back in the day, those that maybe didn't like the prequels, this was the movie that made people go, okay, I get it. So,
but it's not all perfect. If I remember correctly, I remember there's a no that gets made fun of lots. The movies make fun of that still, right? So,
yes.
Yeah.
See, we all know where I'm talking about too.
And
even Jen's face says it all. Jen's face says it all when I said that. I'm sorry, but we look forward to that next week.
It is a little cheesy of a no.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah, it's hard to defend it, but I don't know. He was trying to. Anyways, we'll talk about that next week. I just want to thank everyone in the chat that joined, and everyone else that didn't join the chat and still tuned into us. Thanks, guys. Everyone that showed up today, even Todd. And I'd like to report. Look forward to next week. Probably not on the weekend. We will be discussing Revenge of the Sith. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and remember to follow us on social media, and if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, that'll really help us out so we grow. Thanks a lot, everyone.